Recap: human girl Stella was successfully bid on by Ethan, the cold, high-ranking Winter Crown alpha. Stella's struggles were futile. She was forcefully taken from the auction house. As the luxury car sped onto a mysterious road and plunged off a cliff, she was ripped through a distorted dimension, landing in Wintercrest, a suffocating, alternate world ruled by eternal snow, an iron will, and the solemn white wolf crest. Under the constant threat of being torn apart by a pack of wolves, how can she forge her own path to survival? Chapter 9. Way back home. He didn't answer. I turned to him, my voice rising. People went missing here. Students, you can't drive through here, this place is— Stop the car, I shouted. This path is crazy. It is not normal. People disappear, they come back different. It is not safe. The forest thickened around us, shadows twisting against the windows. The wheels gripped gravel and something else I couldn't name. Cold seeped into the cabin. He said nothing. I lurched forward, trying to grab the door, but the car went faster. Please, I gasped. I'm serious, please stop. The vehicle didn't slow. It accelerated. Faster. Faster. Trees blurred. The wheels no longer felt grounded. Then, I screamed. The car launched forward, fast and hard, and I felt myself lifted off the seat, but before I could slam into the glass, a strong arm snapped around my waist, anchoring me in place. My breath caught. My head turned, almost in disbelief. He was still calm, still watching the road like this wasn't insane, like we weren't. I looked forward. My eyes widened. We were heading straight for a cliff. No. I ducked, arms over my head, bracing for the crash. But the car didn't fall. The world bent. Colors exploded beyond the windshield, shimmering blues and greens, a liquid haze folding over itself in impossible layers. We were no longer in the forest. We weren't anywhere at all. The tires didn't crash. They landed, soft, like brushing into silk. The entire vehicle hummed as if it had glided through something alive. I blinked rapidly. The light outside had changed. No more trees. No more fog. No more cliff. Instead, my eyes caught steel and glass gleaming in through nightlight. Moonlight bouncing off buildings I didn't recognize. Wide streets. Shadows shaped like statues. A skyline I had never seen in my life. Snow fell from the sky, already gathering on buildings and pavements. The temperature had dropped. Where the hell were we? My hands trembled. What was that? What did you do? No answer. Of course. He simply stared ahead, more relaxed than he had been before, acting like we hadn't just driven off a cliff into a wormhole. Like this was routine. I slap myself right there. Of course, to him, this was routine. This situation was only absurd to me. I turned fully in my seat, heart hammering. Where are we? Silence. I said, where are we? Nothing. I gripped the armrest like it could give me answers. You can't just drive me through some warped space and act like that's normal. What the hell is this? His eyes flicked toward me briefly. Cold, unmoved. Then back to the road. We passed what looked like a patrol unit. We stopped. The patrol unit stepped forward, fully armored, sleek black gear with silver detailing. Their weapons were slung casually, but their posture shifted the moment they saw him. One of them lowered his head slightly. Alpha, he said. Welcome back. The other mirrored him with a nod. All clear. No incident on record since your departure. His nod was curt, then the car began to move. The car rolled on. I leaned forward, eyes scanning what lay ahead. Tall gates rose like ancient guards, stone pillars as high as a building, wrought iron bars inlaid with silver. At their center, a white wolf's head insignia glowed faintly in the cold light. A high watchtower shining light briefly on us. Everything else around us was unlike the city. It was simply woods, isolated and quiet, eerily so. The gates parted silently, and the moment the gates closed behind us, I felt the shift. Like something final had clicked into place. The road narrowed. Tall, skeletal trees flanked either side, their branches black against the snow. A long driveway curved ahead, its path lined with lights that pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Then I saw it. The mansion. Cold steel and midnight glass. Massive. Imposing. Its windows were tall and dark, like eyes watching from above. A single terrace jutted forward, and on it, a white wolf statue stared down the drive, teeth bared. I swallowed hard. It looked less like a home and more like a fortress designed to intimidate. We stopped at the front. Two people flanked the entry, standing straighter at the sight of him. No words were exchanged. The door beside me clicked open. I didn't move. I was too paralyzed with fear. She stepped into view, heels silent against the stone. For a second, I was too stunned to breathe. She was breathtaking. Sharp features, sculpted like a marble statue, but warm-skinned and ageless. Her hair shimmered like copper wire spun in candlelight, straight and pulled into a sleek tail that grazed her waist. Her amethyst eyes caught the moonlight. Beautiful, but cold. Too cold. She wore a suit, tailored like it had been sewn on her body. Midnight, black, crisp, with a white shirt beneath and silver cufflinks that shimmered like frost. Pinned to her lapel was the same white wolf insignia I'd seen on the gates. The crest glinted against the fabric, catching my attention even as I tried not to shrink into the car seat. Her body moved with the effortless confidence of someone who had never once been questioned. Tall, poised, sculpted like a warrior goddess. She looked like she could knock a grown man out with one well-placed kick and barely wrinkle her suit doing it. She extended a hand to me. For a brief second, I felt something like relief. A woman. Maybe she would. Her fingers snapped shut before I could reach. Her amethyst gaze darkened, voice flat and sharp enough to cut bone. "Your legs work, don't they?" Her voice had a thick accent, one I recognized as Russian. I stiffened. Any trace of softness I thought I'd seen evaporated. "Step out," she ordered. She didn't need to threaten me. The command was an order and a threat wrapped impeccably in one. I shook as I obliged. The woman's grip on my arm was iron, elegant fingers wrapped too tightly around my bicep, nails just shy of digging in. Her touch wasn't meant to hurt. It was meant to control. I flinched and tried to twist away. "Please," I said, breath hitching. "Let me go." I didn't mean to just let me out." She didn't release me. Her expression didn't shift. The silence stretched painfully. Then, a slow smile tugged at her mouth. Not kind, not amused. It was the sort of smile that said she already knew what I'd say next. "In that case," she said lightly, "can you find your way out? In the snow? With no guide?" I nodded, far too quickly. "Yes, I can." She studied me for a moment longer, then finally let go. With a snap of her fingers, she turned toward the guards stationed nearby. "Open the gates." They moved without hesitation. Not a word was spoken. She reached into her blazer pocket and handed me a small silver card. "Show this to the patrols. They'll let you through." I took it like it might burn me. No one spoke. Not her. Not the Alpha. Not the guards. Everyone just watched. My legs felt like water, but I forced them to move. I stepped down, boots crunching softly against the snow. The gates creaked open again, the sound low and final. I ran. I didn't look back until I did. He stood near the car, still as stone, watching, face unreadable, like he had known from the beginning that I would run, and he wasn't stopping me. He wasn't even moving. That terrified me more than anything. Chapter 10. A Whole New World? The card trembled in my hand as I held it up to the patrol gate. One of the guards scanned it without speaking. The moment it blinked green, the silver bars began to pull apart. No hesitation, no questions, just silent permission. I glanced back over my shoulder. Still no one chasing me. No alarm. No boots pounding after me. Just the watching figures, calm and distant, like they'd seen this happen before. Like it was routine. My legs ached, burning with each step. The cold had started to bite through my shoes, creeping up through the soles and settling in my bones. If I hadn't been sporty, if I hadn't spent years running track, I would have collapsed by now. The trees thinned. The ground dipped. I followed the road, and finally, I saw it. The city. Streetlights, traffic, buildings, civilization. Relief burst like a flare through my chest. I choked out a breath that turned white in the freezing air. Then I froze. The moon. It hung low in the sky, enormous, glowing silver, unnaturally close. If I stretched my hand upward, I could swear I'd brush its face. No time to stop. I kept running. Down the hill, past a vendor unloading crates, past a group of strangers in long coats who turned to watch. People stared as I sprinted by, some curious, others amused, none helpful. A payphone appeared across the street. I darted toward it. A car swerved, horn blaring. I barely missed the bumper. Shit! My feet skidded on the pavement. The world spun. I caught myself on the side of the phone booth and dove inside, breath ragged. I grabbed the receiver, then stopped. No coins. I searched my pockets. Nothing. Just lint, the card, and a trembling hand. I pushed out of the booth, shivering, teeth chattering. I went from stranger to stranger. "Please, I just need a phone. One call, please." They walked past. Some gave me wide-eyed stares. Others rolled their eyes or picked up their pace. They all seemed tall, too tall. Every single one of them towered over me. Their steps were too quiet, their eyes too sharp. I could feel them all slicing into me. I saw a couple coming, laughing at a joke they only knew. Despite seeing fangs glinting, they loomed normal enough, unguarded, almost familiar. I ran forward, desperate. I tried again. "Please, ma'am, can I?" The woman turned. Her brown eyes gleamed, red. My eyes widened to saucers, not sure of what the hell I had just witnessed. I stumbled back, but I had no chance. Her pink manicured hand lifted. I heard and saw flesh split in an instant, bones cracking, but if she felt pain, she did not show it. Her fingers stretched, curved, sharpened, and claws tore through the back of my hand before I could react. I screamed. Pain shot up my arm like lightning. Blood spilled over my fingers. She smirked, wiped her claw on her coat, and pulled her partner closer to her and walked away. Just like that, like it meant nothing. I stared at my hand. I could see the jagged cuts, the skin split open, but worse was the thing twisting in my gut. This wasn't normal. None of this was. Red eyes, claws, fangs, the massive moon, the fact that they could transform. It hit me all at once. This wasn't my town. This wasn't even my world. That warped thing that had happened when we flew over the cliff, it hadn't been metaphorical. It was real. A portal. An actual fucking portal. And now, I was trapped in a world that didn't give a damn if I bled on its streets. That's why they let me go. Because they knew it didn't matter. I was never getting out. The laugh started in my throat, tight, breathless. Then it grew. I leaned back against the payphone, clutching my bleeding hand, and laughed. Laughed like a lunatic. People stared. I didn't care. I laughed until my lungs hurt, until my vision blurred, until the snow started to fall harder, covering my tracks, hiding my blood, hiding me. The cold hit me like a final betrayal. With the adrenaline gone, my body remembered everything. The burn in my calves, the sting in my hand, the numbness creeping through my soles like frostbite blooming from the inside out. I dropped to the base of the payphone and curled in on myself. The snow didn't care. It kept falling. My fingers trembled so badly I couldn't feel them. My teeth chattered. Not from fear anymore, but from a cold so deep it felt like it had cracked my spine open and settled there. A sound escaped me, half sob, half breath. I missed her. God, I missed her. My mother. Her voice. Her touch. Those warm brown eyes that always made everything better. If she saw me now, she would pull me in, hold me close, stroke my hair and whisper that I'd make it out. That I always did. That I was her girl and that I was strong. But I'd failed her. I'd promised myself that I'd find him after the truth broke me on my 18th birthday, that I'd hunt the monster down, the one who destroyed everything, and make him pay, but I couldn't even stay on my feet. The image of him flashed behind my eyes, amber eyes, like mine, tousled dark hair, streaked with bronze under the light, like mine. It made me want to scream. I hated it. I hated that I looked like him. I hated that the world felt like it was closing in. I pressed my bleeding hand to my chest and rocked once. Twice. The pain kept me awake, just enough. Then there was commotion. Murmurs spread like ripples around me. Footsteps slowed. Heads turned. Some people stepped back. Others simply stopped. And then something warm settled on my shoulders. A coat. Heavy, luxurious, scented faintly of smoke and cedar and something else I couldn't name but I knew. My head snapped up. And there he was. Platinum hair slicked back. Pale skin like porcelain. Those ice blue eyes fixed on mine, unreadable. He stood tall, composed. Not a speck of snow dared settle on him. It was him, the man from the car, the one who'd driven me off a cliff, through a portal, into this madness. The Alpha, still in his suit, silent and watching. The crowd around us didn't move. They didn't breathe. The world hushed, but he did nothing, saying nothing, like the city itself held its breath with him. And as I stared up at him, body shaking, blood still dripping into the snow, something inside me cracked. Because somehow, this meant it wasn't over. He'd come back, like he knew he would find me here, desolate and utterly hopeless, defeated, with no strength left to resist. Chapter 11. Kaya. I rose on my own and let him guide me to the waiting car I now recognized as his. As the car moved, I shrunk into myself, letting my mind carry to another place, where I was seated in the same car as a man who looked like he could freeze the world twice over. I let the cold leather swallow me, shrinking into the seat like I could vanish inside it. The coat he draped over my shoulders was warm, far too warm, but I didn't push it off. I couldn't. My body had gone limp. My thoughts, louder than the world outside, began to scream. I'd held on this long for one reason. One person. My mother. It had been 3 years since the truth splintered my world. Years after the police gave up, filing the incident as unresolved because the suspect could not be found. I'd seen her face, shattered like porcelain. I'd heard the whispers of the man who destroyed her of what he did. And I'd felt the fire that lit inside me that day. A fire that refused to go out. He was the reason I worked so hard. Why I buried myself in school, in training, in anything that would give me the skills, the money, the connections to dig deeper than any cop ever could. I became my own weapon. And now I'd never get the chance to repay the bastard who ruined everything. The man I inherited this cursed face from, I didn't even know his name. Just flashes, a description, a shadow that haunted the stories told in murmurs, a ghost with a toothpick in his mouth and a cruel little smile, a man with golden eyes, just like mine. I clenched my bleeding hand tighter, as if the pain could anchor me, but it only made the ache in my chest worse. The car slowed, then stopped. I blinked, disoriented. We were still in the city, but the street was darker here, quieter, like the buildings were holding their breath. I looked up tentatively. Another car had parked across from ours. Black, sleek, familiar. My pulse stuttered, then hammering. That car? I'd seen it before. At the auction house, in the corner of the lot, parked away from the others like it didn't want to be noticed, but I'd noticed. Something about it had unsettled me even then. The door opened. A boot hit the pavement as a man stepped out, and the world shattered into fragments. My breath caught in my throat. My skin flushed hot. Every nerve ending lighting up like fire alarms had gone off inside me. The coat suddenly felt too heavy, too tight. Something clamped down on my throat. No, it couldn't be. But I didn't need to blink, didn't need to second guess. The toothpick dangled from his mouth, twitching slightly as he chewed. That lazy, lopsided smirk curved one corner of his mouth, casual like he didn't already haunt my nightmares. His golden eyes flicked to our car like he already knew exactly where I was sitting. Then the final blow. Black hair, dark as night but streaked through with bronze, catching the light in a way that made it unmistakable. My hair, my eyes, my face. I knew him. I knew him because I'd seen fragments of him every time I looked in the mirror and hated what stared back. I stared at it for years, watched Charlotte expose the fact that I had his image in my home. I knew him because I'd hunted him. I knew him because he was my... And somehow, in this fucked up otherworldly realm where nothing made sense, he was real. Here, in a world I didn't even know existed, he stood, smirking, breathing, whole. And I was breaking. I dug my nails into the coat's fabric, breath-catching, vision tunneling. My body refused to move, but my mind spun violently out of control, faster and faster, like a merry-go-round with rusted brakes. It can't be him, but it was. Every inch of him screamed the truth. The face I inherited like a curse, the hair that had marked me, the eyes I'd never been able to explain away, the ones my mother used to kiss and call sunset gold, while the rest of the world recoiled. He was here, and I was trapped in a car, paralyzed, powerless. I'll never be free. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass of the window. My heart was beating so hard it hurt. My fingers were shaking. My breathing grew shallow. Rapid. Wrong. I didn't know if I was crying or hyperventilating. My ears were ringing. The cold air outside was nothing compared to the chaos erupting inside me. I have to get out. I clawed at the door handle, but froze. Because then, I heard it. A voice. Inside me. Not from outside. Not beside me. Inside me. Stella. I blinked. My pulse thudded. Open yourself to me, child. Please. My heart lurched. No, hallucinating was one thing, but hearing voices? Inside? I let out a cackled. Of course, I was losing my mind. You're not broken, just bruised. Your soul is still yours, but if you keep this pain to yourself, you will destroy us both. My teeth clenched. What the hell are you? I whispered hoarsely, barely able to get the words past my throat. Why are you in my head? I am your wolf, the voice said gently. Even hybrids have one. You are not alone, Stella. I shook my head violently. I can't. Your heart is fractured. Your soul has been trampled. I feel every cut, every bruise. Let me share the burden. Let me shoulder it with you. Stop it, stop, my voice cracked. I clutched at my temples, shaking. Remember your name, my dear. My lips parted. Stella, and mine is Kaya, the voice breathed. and I have waited so long for you to hear me. Shut up, shut up, shut up. I panicked even as her warmth enveloped. The cold crept closer, gripping my heart in cold, painful hands. Anger bubbled up. But even as I said it, something inside me was altered. My skin crawled. The hair on my arms stood straight up. The world outside blurred, but the reflection on the window sharpened. And in it, I didn't see me. Not the girl who was running. Not the daughter of a broken woman. Not the girl despised by her family for what she represented. Not the girl in the coat. No. Something else stared back. Eyes glowing red, not amber nor gold. Pupil stretched, wild. Fangs. Claws beginning to emerge from shaking fingers. A shape that wasn't quite human anymore, shoulders rising, bones twitching like they didn't know where they belonged. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Kaya whispered again. This is your birthright, not a curse. And I snapped. Pain ripped through my limbs. My bones screamed. The world tilted, and I screamed as I felt myself, my very body, start to come undone and remake itself. The shift had begun. And the girl who'd once thought she was human was gone. Chapter 12. Iris's girl, just what I needed, a scorned alpha, stopping my car with the prize he couldn't win. I stepped out, letting the door shut with a finality that echoed down the frost-laced street. Gustav stood across from me, hands buried in the pockets of a midnight coat stitched with ego and bloodline. His smile was still in place, tight, lazy, amused. But the twitch in his jaw betrayed him. He was pissed, and losing composure by the second. I admit, he began, voice syrupy smooth, your taste surprises me. I didn't think the high alpha would bid on a girl just because she had a mark. And what about it? I asked, voice even. It was an open auction. Gustav's smirk twitched. I'll give you something in return, he said, casually brushing imaginary lint from his coat. Anything you want. I lifted a brow. You couldn't outbid me, Gustav. What makes you think you have anything I'd want? His jaw ticked. Then, like the snake he was, he smiled through it, dragging 2 fingers beneath his eyes in mock sorrow. Ouch. That's mean, Ethan. Making fun of my poverty? I thought we were friends. We were never friends, and we both knew he wasn't poor. He was just bitter. I turned my back to him with a flick of my coat. Move your car. But his voice came again, smooth as oil and just as toxic. I know who you're really looking for. I stopped. The wind held its breath. He took that as his opening and stepped closer. Your sister. The little shadow you lost in the dark. What was her name again? And finish that sentence, I warned, voice low, and I'll make sure you never speak again. Gustav smiled wider, ignoring the warning. I might know where she is, he said, lips curling like the words themselves gave him power. All I want in return is the girl, the hybrid. She's not your blood. She's mine, I said coldly. He stilled. I didn't turn to face him. He would never be worth it. And your words? I added, walking back toward my car. They hold as much value as your morals. Gustav didn't respond. A sudden metallic rip tore through the stillness like claws down steel. I turned instinctively, coat flaring at my heels. The roof of my vehicle buckled. A blur of bronze muscle and fury launched from the crumpled roof like a thunderbolt from the gods, jaws wide, claws extended. Gustav barely had time to curse before the wolf collided with him mid-sentence, slamming him hard into the pavement with a sickening crack that echoed between the buildings. I didn't flinch. Gustav let out a strangled growl, struggling beneath the beast that pinned him with terrifying ease. The wolf's red eyes blazed with furiosity, a warning laced into every bared tooth. So much rage and power morphed into something formless and dangerous. It wasn't just any wolf. It was hers. I saw it in the slant of its jaw, the wildness in its posture. Stella's wolf had awakened. And she wasn't just emerging. She was claiming ground. I stepped toward them, finding myself intrigued. Gustav spat blood, still pinned. Gustav's men moved first, 2 stepping out from the shadows, hands flexed, ready to strike. But Gustav raised one hand without even looking at them. Are you kidding me? He said, voice gravel thick with amusement, despite the blood in his mouth. He chuckled, a deep sound that rippled with something unhinged. I haven't had this much fun in ages. And then he shifted. The coat tore clean down the middle as his body twisted, cracked, expanded. Limbs stretched, fur burst through skin, bones broke and reformed. In seconds, the alpha of Nightbane pack stood on 4 legs, towering, bronze, and monstrous with red eyes that burned hotter than ever. Stella braced, but she was too new, too small. He lunged. She met him in kind, leaping up to sink her teeth into his shoulder, but he moved faster. too fast. His massive paw slammed into her side and caught her mid-air by the scruff. He whipped his neck around and launched her like a toy. "Stella," I growled, already moving. I shifted mid-step. Bones broke. Heat roared through me. Power surged under my skin. The old, familiar burn of command. Fur spilled across muscle. My vision sharpened. I met her in the air. Her body hit mine like a stone, limp from impact, blood misting the air. I caught her with my jaw before her skull hit concrete, held her like a pup, cradled her like glass. She whimpered. My body shielded hers, tail arched in warning. Gustav slowed. My paws hit the ground with barely a sound. I towered over her, fur bristling, breath steaming the frozen air. "Shift." The command pulsed. Not a word, just will. She was in my pack. She was my subject, so my will was absolute. Now, she obeyed even if she did not mean them to. Bones cracked as she shifted beneath me, back into bare skin and bleeding flesh. Her shoulder was wrong, dislocated or worse, but she tried to stand anyway, snarling, trembling, eyes locked on Gustav like she meant to kill him with her soul if her body failed. I blocked her path. She shoved at me. "Move." I didn't. She shoved harder. I said, "Move, you bastard." Her nails dug into my fur, desperate, wild. "He's a monster, a fucking criminal, Her voice cracked, rage shaking her broken frame. "A rapist." The street went still. Even Gustav's wolves faltered. Stella's voice cracked again, but she didn't stop. "You sick son of a bitch. I know what you did, what people like you do." Her hands curled into fists as she bared her teeth at him, unafraid. "You think you could hurt her, you could defile her the way you did, and escape, like a fucking coward. You should have stayed, I will fucking kill you." She lunged again, and I caught her mid-swing. One arm around her waist, the other holding her wrist gently but firmly. She fought me. Let me go, but I didn't because she wasn't just furious. She was remembering. I could see it in the way her frame quivered with emotions that wrought through her like thorns. Gustav's smirk faltered for half a heartbeat, then curled cruel. He sniffed once and tilted his head, like a predator, and smiled. "Iris's girl," he said softly. The name hit her like a bullet. I felt her freeze in my arms, felt the blood drain from her limbs. Her heartbeat, thunderous seconds ago, stuttered, then slowed. Her shoulders slumped. "The marked hybrid is my fucking daughter," Gustav pronounced, cackling, his eyes glinting with victory. "She is fucking mine," and knew right there he had just found a way in. Chapter 13. Legitimate. I don't remember how I got into the car. 1 second, I was burning alive in Ethan's arms, lungs full of fire, blood roaring in my ears. The next, I was in the passenger seat, wrapped in his coat, warm, suffocating, smelling like him. Steel in winter, the scent of someone who could kill a man without blinking, the scent of safety. But I didn't feel safe, not even close. Outside, Gustav was still laughing. The kind of laugh that stuck to your skin like grease, like filth. His voice was muffled by the car door, but the words still slid through the sealed glass, oily and cruel. "Fenrir must be on the side of this immoral man," he mused, all teeth and venom. "Imagine that. I don't even need to give you anything in return, Ethan. You just handed her over to me like a gift. Your little prize. Is my fucking daughter." I gripped the armrest until my knuckles went white. "She's blood now," he continued, "and blood speaks that the onyx conquered." He stepped closer to the window. "You'd best buckle down for the next meeting, High Alpha," he said, drawing out the title like a slur. "Because I have a legitimate claim now. The marked hybrid belongs to me." My skin crawled. Every syllable felt like a parasite, burrowing under my flesh. I wanted to scream, to rip the door open and tear his throat out with my teeth. But Ethan didn't move. He didn't look at him. Not once. Not even when Gustav tapped a mocking knuckle against the window, like this was a fucking joke to him. Not even when he said, "See you soon, High Alpha. Take care of my darling daughter. I want her in one piece when I have her." I turned slowly. Ethan's jaw was locked tight, sculpted and silent. His one good eye stared straight ahead, a void so deep it made the dark look shallow. He didn't speak, didn't blink, didn't flinch. He just reached over and gently pulled the seatbelt across me, like I hadn't just been shattered open by the worst truth of my life. His hand brushed my collarbone. I flinched, strangely not from fear but from shame, from how small I felt with him towering over me, from the scream building in my throat that wouldn't come out. Gustav's laugh faded behind us as the engine purred to life, smooth and cold as Ethan himself. The car pulled away from the curb like nothing had happened, like my whole world hadn't just cracked open. But Ethan didn't say a word, and still, somehow, that silence said everything. The silence inside the car felt like a second skin, one stretched too tightly over my bones. It coated everything, from the windows to the warm interior, souring the scent of Ethan's coat that draped around my shoulders like a promise I didn't know how to believe in anymore. Ethan said nothing. The weight of his silence pressed against my chest like gravity, so absolute that even Gustav's venom couldn't pierce it. But it didn't stop the burn. It didn't stop the echo of that bastard's voice as he'd sneered through the glass like a man who had already won. She's blood now, and blood speaks at the Onyx Concord. A claim. His. The knowledge tasted like bile at the back of my throat. I didn't realize I was shaking until Ethan reached out again, wordless, and adjusted the coat around me, like keeping my bones warm would stop them from splintering. His touch was maddeningly gentle, calculated, precise, frustratingly non-invasive, and I hated him for it. Hated how calm he looked, how tightly coiled his energy had become. Not rage, not yet. Just stillness. Ice. A stillness I could neither decipher nor lean into. And so I sat there, skin crawling, throat closing around a scream that had no name. Soon the mansion loomed ahead. The guards at the gates didn't move until Ethan's headlights cut through the dark. Then, with mechanical precision, the iron doors parted. The car rolled to a stop at the edge of a long stone path veiled by mist, the kind that hugged the ground like old secrets. And waiting there, framed by the high-arched entrance like a statue carved from frost, was the woman who had let me escape. Arms crossed, expression unreadable. Her beauty was otherworldly, sharp in a way that felt architectural, like her cheekbones had been drawn. Just stared, cold as the wind that whipped around the courtyard. Then she opened the car door on my side without waiting for the engine to die. "You," she said, tone clipped and glacial. "Out." I blinked, trying to move. But without the adrenaline, my legs had gone numb from the cold. They wouldn't listen. My body trembled in protest, the world a blur of muscle fatigue and humiliation. She frowned, face etched with harsh disapproval. "Pathetic," she muttered. "If you are truly the one marked by the moon, you should not be this beta." The voice was velvet-wrapped steel. Ethan. It cut through the tension like a blade through silence. The woman stiffened at the title. Just slightly, but it was there. Ethan had exited the driver's side, rounding the car with a smooth, deliberate stride, his suit catching the silver light like armor. Behind him, a man stepped forward, a worker. "Hi, Alpha. I can assist." Ethan didn't even look at him. "I'll carry her." He just bent down, and with careful, maddening grace, slipped one arm behind my knees, the other beneath my back, lifting me like I weighed nothing. I didn't protest. I was too raw, too humiliated, too busy pretending the warmth of his chest against my cheek didn't unravel something inside me. He turned to the woman, his beta, and said nothing else. He didn't need to. Her jaw clenched, and she stepped aside, wordlessly holding the door open. Inside, the warmth hit me like a betrayal. It smelled like rosemary and snow. The floors gleamed, chandeliers shimmered. A palace pretending to be a home. "Is the room prepared?" the beta asked, voice crisp, efficient like she didn't waste time on words she didn't need. Two workers appeared from the hall, both dressed in tailored black. The woman held a tablet, the man a folded throw blanket. "Yes, beta," the man said quickly. "Room's been serviced, temperature adjusted, wardrobe delivered as per protocol. Good." Her gaze flicked to me, unimpressed. "I'll take her." His Russian accent wasn't thick, it was cold. Every word slid like black ice, slow, deliberate, and just sharp enough to make you bleed if he wanted you to, yet poised enough to make you lean in if you dared. Ethan didn't stop walking, didn't even slow. "I'll help her get settled in." The statement was quiet. One brow arching with clean, elegant defiance. Her steps grew hurried, heels clicking rhythmically on the tiles as she reached for me. I could already tell that her grip would hurt. "That's not necessary. You have a council call in 20 minutes, and she'll need time to." "I said I'll help her." Ethan's voice was stalactite, ice sharp enough to pierce. A shiver raced through my bones, and I found it was not unpleasant. I felt my checks flush. Her eyes flared, just briefly. The kind of reaction people trained for years not to have. "Understood," she said tightly. "But protocol, I'll handle it," he said, with that same icy precision. She's been through enough today. He just shifted me slightly in his arms, adjusting like I was weightless, and continued toward the hall. The beta's jaw ticked, but she stepped aside, heels clicking softly on the polished floor. "Have the doctor on standby," she said to the assistant behind her, "and inform the kitchen to have her food ready." Though I was sure, by the way she was glaring at me, she would have preferred I ate glass. The hallway we entered next was wide and minimal, glass walls on one side overlooking a manicured courtyard, the other lined with abstract art and recessed lighting that gave off a clean, calming hue. No chandeliers, no velvet drapes, just modern edges, curated silence, and the subtle hum of a house that ran like a machine. The fairy tales about lichens had been far from accurate because, damn, no one ever told you about the cold, about how pristine it all was, how clean, how sterile, how silently monstrous. Everything was white and marble and polished to perfection, so perfect it felt fake, like it could be wiped away the second I bled on it. But I didn't care about any of that. Not the warmth, not the chandeliers or the luxury, not the beta's sharp looks or Ethan's silent efficiency. Not even the fact that I was being carried like something fragile when everything inside me was cracking. Because nothing mattered. Anymore. Not after what Gustav said. Not after I heard it with my own ears. I was a hybrid. Not fully human. Not just marked, but made. By the same man I came here to find. The one I had traced, hunted, researched. The one whose face haunted my nightmares, and whose name was etched into the margins of every plan I'd made since my mother died. Gustav Volkov, my biological father, the man I had vowed to destroy, was here. Everything had indeed changed. At the same time, nothing at all in my plans had been altered. I had found him, or more like he had found me, and I would only spread my mother's ashes when he was nothing but dust. That had been promise. I would make his unwilling offspring his demise. I straightened my spine, looking into his eyes, ones that wouldn't meet mine. "Seems we have a common enemy?" I said. He halted in his steps. A muscle in his jaw jumped, and those frostbitten eyes that had been fixed ahead like a soldier marching toward routine, slowly drifted down to meet mine. Chapter 14. Perfect hybrid golden orbs bore into mine wide and alert, flickering with the weight of everything that had happened barely 20 minutes ago. Yet on the surface, the stubborn tilt of her chin, the slight pout of her lips, and the way she seemed to straighten her spine even as I cradled her in my arms, none of it betrayed weakness. I could already see all the ways this could go wrong, and whether or not I had read her correctly, I was still surprised by the forwardness. "Seems we might have the same enemy." I waited for her to backtrack, to say that wasn't what she meant to soften, to deflate, but the conviction in her bright eyes was as clear as her willfulness. Within half an hour of arriving at the Umbra realm, she had tackled an alpha to the pavement. We were off to a catastrophic start, and now, mischief glinted in her gaze as she waited for my response. She was still in shock, at least. That's what I wanted to believe. She needed sleep, a hearty meal, if she could manage it. Her pain was hers to process, and she needed time alone, not a conversation fueled by adrenaline and obviously unresolved grief. She hadn't shed a single tear, not even when she begged me to release her, not when she faced her biological father for what seemed like the first time. Her eyes had remained dry. Any human would have crashed by now, but she was staring at me, her hand gripping the lapel of my suit like I was the last steady thing left in a world tipping sideways. I glanced at her hand, then back to her eyes. She was still waiting, but I simply raised my gaze to the hallway ahead and resumed walking toward her prepared room. I didn't need to see her face to know she was incredulous. "Sir Alpha," she called. "Alpha, Your Majesty." Her voice grew desperate. "Dude, did you hear me?" She actually clicked her fingers in front of my face. "This woman." Still, I continued on. I led us into the room and gently placed her on the bed. "Did you hear me, Sir Alpha?" she asked again, breathless, as I peeled off her socks. I didn't engage. Her eyes followed my every move, just as restless as the rest of her. I stood. "You can take a shower while you wait for your food," I told her, turning toward the door. My hand reached for the knob, and I paused. "You cannot leave, Miss Stella," I said plainly. "Then, I am yours." I froze. She had managed to stun me again twice in less than 2 hours. Her voice was the softest I'd heard it. And this time, it wasn't a statement of fact. It was surrender, almost too gentle to be from her. I turned. She was on her feet, shoulders squared like she was preparing for war. "I am yours," she repeated, the voice still not quite sounding like hers. "I will be anything you want me to be." She took a step forward, slow, steady. Your prisoner, your slave, your bitch. There wasn't even a flicker of hesitation. I am yours to use as you. Miss Stella, I warned, voice low. A man of your prestige and power doesn't throw away $1 billion for nothing, she pressed. You want something, and I won't resist. She was less than a yard away. If it's my life you want, Miss Stella, her name came in a drawl. I'll tender my neck for your blade. She stopped. Our breaths mingled. The distance between us had vanished. But I want something in return. The tension coiled between us like a spring wound to breaking. I could see the faint freckles over her nose, the fan of her lashes, the bluish shadow under her eyes. She was burning from the inside out. What might that be, Stella? I asked, voice cold and measured. Her eyes glistened. I want my father dead. I want your help, she said. And though her voice was laced with venom, her eyes were rimmed with an agony so profound, I could taste it in the air between us. Her stare remained intense, her words still floating in the air around us. Though she was still, her heartbeats were erratic, the beating of a drum as if approaching a crescendo. It climbed and rose. I knew it would fully come crashing down on her. Healthy hybrids were rare for a reason. Shifting barely ever agreed with their bodies, especially under heavy emotional strain. She clutched her chest, eyes flaring wide, amber irises morphing red for a second before going out like a light. Her breath fractured, a gasp escaping her. Her body went slack in an instant before she crumpled forward, and onto me. I gripped her limp body, hands cupping the small of her back, letting her head fall slightly back before scooping her into my arms. As I laid her back onto the bed for a second time, her chest steadily rising and falling, I could not help the intrigue blossoming like a forbidden flower that was never meant to be looked upon, let alone plucked. I did not need a DNA test to know whose blood she was. It was in her face, every line and shadow a reflection of him, the dark curls that caught the light in bronze glints, the tan skin dusted faintly with freckles, a nose with the faintest bump, as if it had once been broken and healed without care, full lips set in defiance, and sharp cheekbones that could cut glass. Though in the wrong light, they looked almost gaunt, hollowed by something deeper than hunger. I had seen that same combination before on none other than the Alpha of Nightbane, Gustav Volkov. I knew he had enemies, of which I was one, but to think he had extended his insidious reach into the Terra realm human territory, making an enemy of his child. One who despised him enough for his deeds to propose some type of impossible partnership, an exchange with the person who had bought her. A knock at the door splintered the silence before the door slowly swung open. Veronique stepped in, but she was not alone, and I recognized the green and gray garb before the wearer stepped inside. I fought the urge to pinch the place between my brows. The seer has arrived, she announced quietly, stepping aside to make way for the older woman. Her sightless eyes found me instantly. My Alpha, she greeted, bowing, then stopping. Seems you are not pleased by my presence tonight. I apologize. Yura, there is no need for that, I assured her, while staring straight at my beta. Yura seemed to relax, smiling faintly before she whipped her head to the bed, to Stella. Of both lichen and human, she whispered, making her way her. She stopped just shy of where Stella still lay sleeping. She whispered, as she reached for her hand and grasped it. Flipping her wrist over, she grazed a fingertip over the outline of the lunar crest without missing a curve. Seers did not need eyes to see. Silence reigned like a wicked king. She is at her first phase, her voice reverent, though it slithered through the quiet of the room with an air of unease. She is a tightly wound mass of endless suffering, insurmountable guilt, and anger. A lot of anger. Her milky, unseeing eyes shifted to me. This hybrid is perfect, Alpha. Chapter 15. Gutter-bred pig. A painful current of electricity shot through the stitches again as I leaned in to open my door. I gritted my teeth, fighting the instinct to double over from the agony. I couldn't let Caesar see me like this. He would blame himself, like he always did. I closed my eyes, trying to ground myself against the sensation. My hand braced against the doorframe as I waited for the pain to ebb. I knew skipping my post-donation checkups after giving away my kidney a year ago had been reckless, but I told myself I'd push through like I always did. I didn't have the time to rest, nor the money to spend on extra care. My body would adapt to living with one kidney, and I'd be fine. Or so I thought. I was wrong. A year later, the pain and discomfort had become unbearable. With the championship around the corner, I needed to be at the top of my game. Instead, the hospital handed me bad but well-deserved news. My minor infection had turned into fluid accumulating at the surgery site. Thank God it wasn't an abscess, but it still hurt like hell. All I needed was for the fluid to be drained, but the antibiotics in my bag were a reminder that the fight wasn't over. In a few hours, they'd knock me out like a light. Caesar was probably asleep. He hadn't picked up my calls to come get me from the hospital. I figured he was tired. The faint imprint of the promise ring on my finger eased some of the ache, and I found myself looking forward to an afternoon with him. I mustered my strength and plastered on a smile that I hoped didn't look like a grimace, then turned the knob. My smile faded in an instant, my nose wrinkling as a scent hit me, a smell that made my stomach turn. Black smoke billowed out of a pot on my stove. Shit. Something was burning. I dropped my bag and raced for the kitchen. I quickly turned off the fire, grabbed the pot without thinking, and ran for the sink, which wasn't far. I sighed deeply, taking in a breath of smoke. Tears pricked my eyes, my throat coated with ash. It was only when I turned on the water for the blackened pot that I realized I had picked it up with my bare hands. I examined my palms, watching as the red blisters that should have hurt like hell faded. That was odd. First the strange tattoo, then the heightened senses, the glowing crimson eyes, and now this? If I didn't know any better, I would have thought I was. My ears twitched, catching the sound of a voice carrying from my room. If Caesar was awake, how come he didn't realize something had been burning? Dread pooled in my gut as I made my way toward the only other room in my apartment. I found myself creeping, inching closer. I pressed my ear to the door. Harder, Caesar. A moan. My heart was in my throat even before it registered that I knew that voice. Dread iced over my spine. I turned the doorknob, begging whichever god existed that I was wrong. The promise ring on my finger suddenly seemed to restrict blood flow. The door creaked open, and my world imploded, my mind going blank, my hand slack on the knob as it slowly swung open completely. My eyes were glued to the two figures tangled on my bed. Caesar's back was to me, muscles tense and flexing with every movement. Straddling him, her head thrown back, hair spilling over my pillow, was Charlotte, my sister. The room seemed to tilt around me, the edges blurring. The pounding in my ears drowned out everything but the sound of my own breath, shallow, uneven, ragged. Caesar froze mid-motion. Maybe he'd felt my stare, or maybe the sudden dead silence behind him was too loud to ignore. Slowly, he turned his head over his shoulder. When our eyes met and he rolled his eyes, annoyed, something in me cracked. Not a fracture that could be patched, but the kind that splits jagged and utterly permanent. The first words out of his mouth were bitter and irritated, twisting the dagger between my ribs. "Why are you home so early?" His tone was acidic. He rose, unashamed, while in my periphery, Charlotte scrambled to cover herself. I didn't answer his question. I simply stared, words evading me. Who was this stranger? Who was this man? I turned to leave, but the stitches at my side pulled viciously, a sharp sting burrowing deep into my skin. My breath hitched, and before I could steady myself, a hand shot out and clamped around my wrist. "Answer my question," Caesar demanded, his voice low and edged with something ugly, something I didn't recognize. Had this been who he was all along? Had I been so stupid? I stared at him, the audacity hitting me harder than the pain. "You're seriously asking me that?" I yanked my hand free with more force than I thought I had, startling him enough to make him take a step back. "You cheat on me in my own damn bed with my own sister, and you have the gall to demand answers from me." My voice rose, the words sharp enough to cut skin. "Let me make this crystal clear for you, Caesar. We are done. After this, you and me are over." He laughed a bitter, humorless sound and shook his head. "You ungrateful bitch. I stood by you when your own fucking family despises you. If you had half a brain, you'd realize no one will ever care for you the way I have. I owe you nothing," I snapped, my voice trembling with rage that filled every vein. "And if you want to talk about what you've done for me, then give me back my kidney." The color drained from his face. "What?" He dared to look as if I'd slapped him. "You heard me." I stepped toward him, glaring even though all I wanted to do was break down. "Give it back." On second thought, don't. I don't want it. You're a pig, and I don't want that shit back in my body. The shock in his eyes hardened into something darker. In a blink, he closed the space between us, his hand shooting up to wrap around my throat. My back slammed into the wall, the air in my lungs snatched away as his grip tightened. Charlotte had the decency to jump off the bed. She ran to us, trying to rip him off me. "You don't get to call me disgusting," he hissed, his face inches from mine. I could see the freckles I had once counted not too long ago. "Because deep down, you know your family's hatred for you is justified." The words pierced deeper than his grip, but he wasn't done. I was breathless, but it had nothing to do with his tightening hold on my neck. "You're nothing but a living reminder," he said, each word slow, deliberate, poisonous. "A crime with a heartbeat, a reminder of your mother's assault. That's all you are. Nothing more, and you still dare to have his face." His face, my father's face. The borders of my vision darkened until the black swallowed everything. My father's face, the lichen's face. I opened my eyes, sitting up, a migraine lancing through my skull. I gripped my head and then stopped. Last I remembered, my bed had the softness of hardened cement. This was not mine. I rose, springing off the bed, my heart lurching in my chest. I whipped my head around, taking in my bizarre surroundings. Confusion whirled in my already jumbled mind. The hell. My head snapped up confusion, morphing quickly into utter bewilderment. Who the hell installs a chandelier in their bedroom in this economy? I took it all in. The bedding could have been spun from pink-tinted clouds. The queen-sized bed carved with such intricate detail I wouldn't have been surprised if angels had wept as they crafted it. The same could be said for every other piece of furniture in the room, which was the size of my entire apartment. Where the hell was I? I ran up to the window, fought the thick curtains to let me through, and slid open the glass. Frigid air hit my face like a punch, making me reel back. I tripped over the vengeful curtains and slammed the back of my head against the tiles. I could have sworn my brain self-destructed. I got up, nursing the swelling as I looked out the window. Snow. But it was July. Then it clicked. More like it all came back like roundhouse kick to my already throbbing head. My sale, the auction, the portal over the cliff, the new world. My father. The pulsing spread to the base of my skull as I gritted my teeth. The disgusting, gutter-bred pig. Confusion and disorientation were snuffed out in an instant, replaced by vitriol that filled my veins, corroding and coating them with venom. It didn't rush. No, it fucking stewed. It settled into my bones. Suddenly, a growl invaded the silence. Chapter 16. The Escape? I do not recall informing you to call the seer. My voice carried an edge, and she was far too sharp-witted not to hear it. Veronique tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her expression softening into something almost appeasing. "Ethan, you know why," she said, "even if you're too stubborn to admit it. The sooner, the better." Dealing with a hybrid, her face darkened, the word rolling off her tongue with quiet contempt, should never be drawn out longer than it ought to be. One brow lifted not from shock, for she rarely managed that, but from a faint amusement at her assumption she could think for me. "What?" she pressed, tone almost audacious, as if daring me to disagree. "You know I'm right, the veil is breaking." The truth in her words was undeniable. The veil was thinning, splintering, and with every fracture, lunar flux bled into the human realm like water through a cracked dam. Umbra's reserves were waning in turn, a slow starvation that would leave even the strongest lichens hollow and powerless. That was without counting the human students already exposed to it. If the crest-bearer was not prepared soon, there might be nothing left to prepare her for. Still, agreement was not permission, and Veronique had the dangerous habit of being too perceptive for her own good. "I am not ignorant of the stakes," I said at last, my voice level but iron-bound. "But I will not have you making unilateral decisions in my stead. Her readiness will be determined by me, and on my terms." A flicker of challenge lit her gaze, but she dipped her head in compliance. I turned away, running my hand through my hair. "You should get to bed." "Ethan." I halted mid-stride, the shift in her cadence as palpable as the tension that thickened the air. "Yes, Veronique." She hesitated, as though weighing whether to speak at all. "Do you think you'll be able to do it when the time comes?" The words hung between us like a guillotine above a neck. "I will do what needs to be done," I said plainly, though the question's blade tip pressed dangerously close to the heart. "Go to bed, V." She chuckled, eyes glinting with a rare playfulness she never shared with anyone else. "Good night, Wojak." Her gaze flickered to the place where my left arm had once been, a shadow dimming in her eyes. The digits of my bionic arm flexed involuntarily. For a heartbeat, we were back in the outlands, my mother's breath warm against the blizzard's bite. "Their blood will freeze on your command, Wojak." A chill crept into my bones, a shiver pulled from the past. It was not a pet name, and she knew that. Her saying it had been deliberate, a reminder, and then she was gone, her steps retreating into the corridor, leaving me alone with the soft click of the door and the echo of her challenge. I glanced at my bed, laid and ready, yet sleep was the farthest thing from my mind it always had been. Is greater than, "Cheer up, why don't you?" I rolled my eyes as Ver reverberated in my skull, colored with the rumbling amusement that had pulled me from the brink more times than I cared to admit. Is greater than you let her get under your thick frozen skin, he observed, chuckling low. And you didn't even growl. You worry me, Vlady. I cringed at the nickname he refused to let go. I shrugged him off, crossing over to the window that overlooked not only the mansion but the city ahead. The low-hanging moon, the source of power for the day-to-day. The human realm might have solar energy. Here we had lunar energy. It powered our lives. The cities of the Wintercrest pack. My domain. But for how long? I tapped my metal fingers on the sill, the clicking therapeutic despite the dreadful truth of what lay beneath its reinforced plate, screws, and integrated circuits, the ugly inevitability of reality. I clenched the foreign hand. Is greater than, but you know she's right? Zver prodded, refusing to accept my silence. The crest-bearing hybrid needs to grow more than just fangs. The veil needs her before it completely rips. Yet you circle her like you don't have teeth. I finally gave in, because though we didn't share much, certainly not a personality, our stubbornness was another story entirely. Is greater than, would you have me take a bite out of her now? I muttered in my mind. Is greater than, no, mostly because I trust she'd return the favor tenfold, and we can't afford losing more limbs. I could almost hear the shrug in his tone. But at least stop circling like you're trying not to spook a deer. Give me one reason why. Is greater than he deadpanned. She's not a deer. I had to agree there. She was not the type to be caught in headlights she'd charged toward the car. Is greater than, and offer, said Kara proposition. He teased. Run over my father and you can eat me. You insufferable beast, I spat, fogging the glass. He simply chuckled in my head, enjoying every second of my frustration. Of all wolves the moon goddess could have given me. Is greater than, hey, I heard that. His voice feigned hurt. Suddenly my expression darkened as I registered a shift in the air before I could counter, and then what followed as a crash. My ears perked up, the hairs on my neck rising. Did you hear that? I asked Zver. Then it dawned. Stella. I was already crossing the room to the door. I was out of the door in dash, making sure my footfall was hushed enough not to alarm Veronique. She might stay awake for her duties, but once her head hit the pillow, she would be gone like the wind. I was on the second landing when I heard voices from what was mostly the kitchen. Is greater than, let's see how your hybrid attempted an escape, Zvar said. I got to the second floor and followed the sounds to the kitchen indeed. They had her cornered near the far counter, two of them gripping her arms while a third hovered just out of reach, his hand close to the dagger at his belt. She thrashed once, twice, not like a trapped doe but like a cornered panther lean, coiled, eyes blazing molten gold despite the desperation in her voice. I said let me go, she snapped, the pitch raw with frustration. I wasn't, Alpha. One of the guards cut in sharply as soon as they spotted me. Their grips tightened like they feared she might vanish between breaths. The hybrid attempted an escape. Zver muttered dryly in my head. Is greater than, and here we go. Stella's head snapped toward me, fury flashing under the strands of her dark curls. I have a name, you know. And if you would just listen, she was out of her quarters without an escort. The second guard interrupted, ignoring her entirely. Past curfew. A low, guttural sound tore through the kitchen, not from me, not from Zver, but from somewhere between the three of them. It was primal enough to make even my seasoned guards freeze mid-sentence. They turned, bristling. What the hell was that? One demanded. Stella arched a brow, breathless but smiling like she'd just won something. My stomach, she said flatly. I'm hungry. I came to fix myself something to eat. Zver's laugh rumbled like distant thunder in the back of my skull. I like her. I ran my hand over my face before gesturing for them to let her go. The moment the less had their hold, she ripped herself away. Yes, hands of the merchandise. The fact that she said it with such seriousness only made it worse. Zvar laughed again. Fiery eyes settled on me as she marched up, not intimidated in the slightest. Help me, ask your men who in their right mind would risk hyperthermia by escaping this night. I raised a brow. Didn't you try to escape tonight? She pursed her lips, a flush spilling over her cheeks. Fair enough. She bit out before her eyes slipped to my bionic arm.